This is Adam Fromal and Dan Favale here with the Full Court Press. Today we're joined by our first guest. It's Kelly Scaletta. He writes about the Bulls and the rest of the NBA for Bleacher Report. And we're going to be talking about Derrick Rose today. So, Kelly, just completely open-ended. I want to see what you think Rose is going to do this season. Is he going to be an MVP contender? Is he going to take a while to round into form? Just what's going to happen?
I think both things are true. It's going to still take a few more games before he gets really going. During the preseason, he played just magnificently, and then he got to the regular season games, and through the first few, he's looked like crap.
I think that would be pretty kindly.
And it's funny because a lot of the Bulls fans are going into panic mode. And it's easy to look at the preseason and put too much into that, or it's easy to look at the first three games and put too much into that. And I was just thinking about, like last year during the NBA Finals, remember how after every game, it was like the finals were over, everything had been turned, it was a race to see who could overreact the most. And it just seems like that's what's going on with Rose right now. It's whoever has the biggest overreaction is right. And the truth is, he in his game, but right now he's trying so hard to force everything. If I don't know how many of the games you've watched, but he's just pushing way too hard. He's trying to dribble into places where he can't get it, and it's almost like the one thing he couldn't get going in the preseason was that little his specialty shot, that teardrop floater it is. And that is not falling, and it's like he's trying to force that shot. He keeps trying to get that shot going, and as a result, the rest of his game is suffering right now.
Now, Kelly, do you think it's more a confidence thing with him, Kelly, or do you think it's just him eventually rounding into form? Like this is kind of residual damage from the injury?
No, I don't think it's a confidence thing so much as it is a competitiveness thing. He's trying so hard to prove himself that he can't prove himself.
Okay.
He's trying to force things because he wants to prove that he can do those things rather than just let the game come to him. In the preseason, he was letting the game come to him.
See, because of that, I almost think that the Bulls should scale his minutes back a little bit right now.
Well, haven't they already done that? He's not playing as much as he was. He's playing 33 a night, which isn't that much.
But even beyond that, I think, against the Sixers, the offense looked much more fluid when Heinrich was on the court, at least for the first half.
Yeah. I don't think so, because what's going to happen is things are just going to get to the point where they click, and then they start going smoothly again. He's just going to. I don't think it's really so much. A matter of he needs to get more. I don't know what getting less playing time would do to help him.
Yeah, Adam, what's your thing with the less playing time? Like you just want Heinrich to run the offense? I don't understand that.
I just think if you ease him back into it more, like Kelly said, he's forcing things right now, and if you do limit his minutes more, it might send a message, and B, it's going to make the team more competitive because he's going to see how that offense is running without him on the court.
Now,
I would still give him 25 to 30 a night.
My whole thing is if he winds up getting injured or something where it's a necessity, then yeah, but he needs to learn how to play alongside these guys, in some cases again, but mainly I want to see more of him and Jimmy Butler playing together because I don't know if Kelly will agree or not, but those two guys are the future of the Bulls, so I don't want to see their minutes being scaled back in any way. So I want to see him kind of power through and, maybe 33, 34 minutes is fine for now, but I definitely don't want to see him play less unless he absolutely has to because of his health.
Sure. Is Butler already the best shooting guard he's played with? I guess you could make an argument for Ben Gordon early in his career, but...
No, you couldn't.
I don't know, it's close.
No, you couldn't. Ben Gordon was so one-dimensional even when he was great. Jimmy Butler's by far the best. When he was with the Bulls, he was fine, but, Jimmy Butler is on a whole different level already, and I'm a huge Jimmy Butler fan, probably somewhat irrationally too, so that might not help, but that's just what it is over here.
Butler is just. I think a lot of people don't realize how good Butler is going to be. Like I get these people, I get Knicks fans debating with me on Twitter about Eamon Shumpert and Jimmy Butler, and I like, to me that's a no-brainer. I don't even think twice about it.
Oh, it's not.
I'll take Jimmy Butler over Shumpert without even thinking about it.
Are you guys kidding? No, seriously, I agree. Now, what do you think his Butler's ceiling is, Kelly? Would you say like superstar, or is it kind of impossible for him to do that alongside Rose, especially when he's still playing next to Joakim Noah as well?
I think Dangish territory, like around Luol Deng, like all-star, but like your all-star that's there almost as much because of effort and hustle and just kind of doing everything. I don't ever see him as like a 20-point-a-game scorer. I just don't see that much offensive potential in him. But his ceiling, like 15 to 18 points a game and first team all defense. So, I don't know if he's, like I wouldn't put him in, some people have said like Paul George, and I think that's a stretch.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't surprise me to see him eventually develop into a 20-point-a-game guy just because he showed so many flashes while Rose was out during last year's postseason. I don't remember who it was against, but there was this one stretch where he kept hitting these like through-the-leg dribble, step-back, fadeaway jumpers. It was incredible.
Is it even wrong that I would, and I maybe say almost, but I could see him reaching, because I think Paul George is overrated. I could see him reaching or exceeding Paul George's ceiling. I think George benefits from being the first option in a really simplistic offense. And I could see Butler as a number 2. If you took him out and you put him as a number 1 somewhere, I could see him being better than George. Maybe not as a facilitator, but in terms of being more efficient and defensively, I could see Butler surpassing George.
Yeah. It's really hard to tell with Butler what his ceiling is. He finished last in usage on the Bulls last year in usage rate.
Does that infuriate you guys in Chicago? Like that Tom Thibodeau doesn't generally trend towards playing younger players? Because during the regular season last year, I thought Butler needed a lot more playing time.
I'm not even talking about the minutes. I'm talking even when he was on the court. His usage rate was dead last on the Bulls. Like, I think it was around under 15%.
Well, that's what I was kind of getting towards. Like, I'm talking about minutes and usage. Like, when they're on the court, I feel like sometimes he's not even using them properly. Does that aggravate you guys at all, or do you just have enough faith in Tibbs at this point?
I think there's definitely a vocal group that gets bothered that Tibbs doesn't play the rookies enough. Of course, right now I don't think anybody's really calling for Teague to get a lot of playing time because, we're fatigued. And Snell looks promising, but he has, in Miami, he didn't exactly in the game. It wasn't like, wow, we need more Snell. So, but Butler, there was a lot of, you could tell he was going to be special. Even in his first season, there was one game against the Knicks where he shut down Melo for the fourth quarter. And usually, if a guy takes on Melo one-on-one and shuts him down, you get the feeling they're a pretty good defender. And he didn't get a lot of playing time after that. And we were like, what's going on? Why won't he play him?
Sure. But, now, before Dan goes too crazy with Carmelo Anthony, I want to bring it back to Rose a little bit.
I didn't disagree with anything he said. I feel like I didn't disagree. I think he's right. I feel like Carmelo Anthony's kind of the barometer for young defenders. If you stop him, you're a good defender. So I didn't disagree with that. But go ahead, Adam.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to bring it back to Rose a little bit here. If I remember correctly, Kelly, your preseason predictions for him were something like 24.4 points and around 8 assists a game. Are you sticking by those, or have they changed based on how these first 3 games have gone?
No, and that's what I still see him doing 24 and 8. In his MVP season, he did 25 and 8. So I think he'll do 24 and 8 or 9. 3 games is just 3 games. If it's December and he's still playing like this, then I'm going to have to reevaluate.
What is the time limit that you guys are giving him, or you think, like, how long before the Bulls and their fans should panic?
Before they should panic? Well, if I can address it a slightly different way, I think it'll take probably 5 to 10 games before he returns to normal. So then maybe if after that, then you start getting concerned. If after the All-Star break and he's still playing like crap, then there's real cause for concern. But I don't really think that's going to happen, because the things that I'm looking for right now are, is he aggressive with the ball? Does he have his explosiveness? Does he have his speed? Those kinds of things he's doing fine.
The other thing I think it's important to remember is that it's only 3 games, and just because it happened at the start of the season doesn't make it more significant. I bet if you went through Rose's game log from the last couple seasons, that you could find multiple examples of like 3 or 4 game stretches where he did struggle like this. And it's just because it's the only thing we have to work with, and he's coming off that injury that everybody's freaking out maybe a little bit more than they would if this slump, for lack of a better term, would happen.
Yeah. I definitely think it's being. I think it's being blown out of proportion, but I think you have to reach a point where if he's not his former self, I would say by Thanksgiving. Like, I don't know if I'm willing to give him the All-Star break before I kind of start thinking, what's going on here. Because I feel like a lot of it with him could be mental, because he's so emotionally invested in the game of basketball, and you could just tell more than anybody else. He's so connected to the game, to his teammates, to the city of Chicago, which is great. So if something doesn't go right, if he doesn't start, and I think he will. I don't think he's going to wind up floundering and teetering out. But if something by Thanksgiving, mid to late November, if he hasn't returned to close to a former self or something, I'm talking like 20 points, 6 assists a game, I would be concerned, really concerned. That might be the panic button time for me.
Well, I think there's a point where you start showing concern, and then that's why I was. There's a point where I would start raising my eyebrow, and there's a point where I would start to panic. So I guess it depends on what you mean. But even, after being out of the game for a year and a half, 3 weeks, how long did it take, even Adrian Peterson, when he came back after his injury last year and won the MVP, and he had that amazing season, you look at his first month of the season, it was pretty average. Then he started lighting everybody up for 150, 200 yards a game for the second half of the season. So,
now, Dan, since you brought up the panic button, if Rose does struggle and there is reason to panic, what does that entail? What do you think the Bulls would do?
I mean, they're not really in a position to do much. Like, you're not going to trade Derrick Rose. That's stupid. You can dangle Luol Deng in a trade, but you're not going to get adequate value in return for Deng. And personally, if I'm the Bulls, I'd rather, if they're looking to get rid of Deng, I'd rather let him walk in the offseason, amnesty Carlos Boozer, and see what kind of cap room you have to work with. I think you have to let it play out, but I do think you start thinking in terms of, oh crap, what are we going to do this coming summer if Rose isn't Rose? So that would be my panic thing, and that's when you go into let whatever's going to happen this season play out, let Thibodeau coach this team the way he's going to coach it, and we need to start planning for, if this is what life is going to be. If, maybe Rose still scores 15 or 20 points a game, but he doesn't shoot at as high a clip or dish out as many assists. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but I think if that's what becomes apparent, then you have to start thinking, what are we going to do next summer to cope with this?
Yeah. Thing is what can you do?
Well, that's what I'm saying. This season, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't do anything.
It's like, even if you wanted to trade him, if he plays like crap all year, who's going to take on that max contract if he's not playing. If he's not playing that well, I think he's still got 3 years left on it, and there's no option on it.
Yeah,
so,
well,
who's going to take the contract? Who's going to trade for him if he's so bad that Chicago wants to trade him for him?
Well, like I said,
they're stuck with him. He's there, so.
I agree that I don't think they would ever trade him, but I always think for a player like Rose, especially as young as he is, if the Bulls got to a point where they wanted to trade him, I'm sure they could find a taker. I'm sure of it. I know there's a lot of good point guards in the league, but if you're even willing to take a gamble on Rose, I know it's a lot of money. Rose is a top 3, top 4 player when he's healthy. So I think they could find a taker. I don't think it's ever going to come to that. I think he could continue to play this way the entire season, and the Bulls wouldn't even think about trading him.
So let's take the flip side now and say that he does just light it up starting next game. What's the ceiling this year? Is this a championship team?
Well, I think they have the makings of a championship team. Even though they lost 4-1 to Miami in 2011, it's not like those games weren't competitive. I mean, 2 of them came down to the last shot. So, I mean, the ball bounces a little bit differently, and they're going back to Chicago, with Chicago up 3-2. So, it's not as dramatic. Wasn't as dramatic a win as like 4-1 makes it sound. And so then it's just, well, what's the difference between Keith Bogans and Jimmy Butler? You know, that's a pretty massive difference right there. So that's how I just say, well, is Jimmy Butler better than Keith Bogans? Just a lot.
He's getting paid less than him this year.
Yeah, isn't that weird? That is the craziest contract. How did Keith Bogans manage to luck his way into that one?
Because the NBA is a wonderful place. But I definitely agree that the Bulls are still the Heat's biggest threat in the East if Derrick Rose is healthy. It all comes back to him. I consider the Pacers and the Brooklyn Nets wildly overrated. Until the Knicks start shooting more threes and hitting them, they're not going to be a threat to anybody. So this is still the Heat's conference to lose, but just looking up and down the different teams' rosters, I don't know how you look at any of the teams and say, you know, they might be able to compete with the Heat over 7 games except for the Bulls. I'm not even sold on the Pacers. So if Rose gets healthy, I think this is definitely a team that could at least be fated for an Eastern Conference Finals rematch, and they're the greatest chance any other team has of upsetting the Heat comes from them.
You're not going to throw the Sixers in there yet?
I got to give Michael Carter-Williams like another game or two before I'm ready to do that.
Well, they haven't looked very good tonight against the Warriors.
Oh, okay. They finally showing their... Yeah. You figured reality was going to come sooner or later.
Well, let me ask you guys this, and this is regardless well, I guess it's not regardless, but let's say everything works out in Chicago. Derrick Rose is Derrick Rose. You enter this summer, and what do you see the Bulls doing? I don't think Deng is coming back. I think they'll try and create some cap space by amnestying Boozer and getting rid of Deng. That's just where I'm at right now. Do you see them potentially trying to make a play for someone else then by doing that with an impact player, like a bigger name, not a Luol Deng or Carlos Boozer, but someone better in the free agent class? Or do you just see this is the team that's going to move forward into next season?
Well, I think that their next season plans are pretty much etched in stone regardless of what happens. Even if they win a championship, I think there's a good chance Deng walks and Boozer's amnesty. They're paying about $89 million this year. And so even if they were to amnesty Boozer and let Deng walk, they're talking about around $10 million in cap space. And for some reason, Bulls fans have it in their head that they've got money to go after somebody like Carmelo or LeBron or something. And it's, on the one hand, you look at it and you go, well, you know, can you replace Boozer and Deng for $10 million? But
well, I know Adam says that Boozer's replacement's already on the roster.
Taj?
I'm still sold on Taj Gibson. I wish he would get more time, especially with how their roster looks right now.
Yeah.
How do you do that with the way Boozer's playing, though?
He's been better the last 2 years with Taj Gibson on the floor.
Yeah. Well, last year they were worse defensively and offensively when Boozer played.
Yeah. Well, defensively, I think Taj Gibson is top 3 power forward. If you get just on pure defense, he is really a phenomenal defensive player. But they're going to bring over Nikola Mirotic, and so he'll take up one of the forward spots. Maybe Gibson will take up the other one. I don't know if Mirotic will play small forward. I know he can play both, but I don't know if he's. And it's hard to say with European players because it's not like we really get a chance to watch them play. And so all you do is you read scouting reports, pretend like you know what you're talking about. But it's I've watched him play 2 games. If I'm being totally honest. And I don't know if he's got small forward speed. I know he's got an NBA shot, and I know he's definitely going to be a solid NBA player, 2-star NBA player. I've seen his projections anywhere from go as high as AK-47 or Dirk, But that's his ceiling. I don't know if he's that good. If he is, then for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the Dirk comparisons as well, and the last time the Bulls brought over a European forward, it worked out pretty nicely.
Yeah, he worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of player they need. The other thing I've heard is there's been speculation that they might try and work out a deal to get Kevin Love.
I would love that. As a fan of floor spacing, 3-point chuckers, and stretch forwards in general, I would love that. Here's my question, would you give up Jimmy Butler in a trade for Kevin Love?
I think you have to, when you think about even their names, Love and Rose, I mean, how do you not go, okay, yeah, that's a nice little combination right there. Their games are so perfect for each other. With Love being able to stretch the court the way he does and open up the paint for Rose, that would be a very, very good combination. But, that's a tough decision. Because then if you're letting Deng walk and you trade Butler away, then your wings are pretty open.
Well,
you might have to give up the Charlotte pick, too.
Well, for Love, I'd give up that Charlotte pick. I'm super high on Jimmy Butler, as you guys can clearly tell, so I've always been a little bit anxious over giving up him in a deal. But what's interesting about that, the possibilities kind of decline after this season for the Bulls unless they sign a player or get Deng on a reasonable deal so that they can have that, large chunk of money because Butler's not going to match up financially with Love's salary. And the Timberwolves aren't going to have the cap space. The Bulls, rather, aren't going to have the cap space to absorb it.
Right.
So I'm interested to see who that, not necessarily the cornerstone of the deal, but where's that large chunk of financial commitment going to come from after this season? Right now, it would be easy with, constructed around Deng, Butler, and picks. But next year, what do you do?
Well, even this year, I don't think Deng would be enough. I think because the Bulls will be bringing back more money. Butler's still on a rookie contract and is a number 30 pick.
Yeah, that's what makes it so complicated.
Still be about $5 million short. But Boozer, Butler, and making Boozer the financial piece there.
And
it would work for Minnesota to get a power forward back too.
It would work. I don't know what you give them to say, let's play Carlos Boozer and Nikola Pekovic on the floor together. That's going to make them think that's a good idea. That'll be a defensive disaster.
All right, well,
where's David Kahn? We want David Kahn back. Stupid decisions to be made.
Well, since we've managed to go from Derrick Rose to David Kahn, I think it's time to transition into our closing segment.
Bacon! Bacon! Where's the bacon? I smell bacon! 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 Gotta be bacon! Only one thing smells like bacon! That's bacon!
That's right, it's time for What Burns My Bacon, and today we're going to find out what is annoying Kelly.
So yesterday I was watching the NFL Network right before the football came on, and they were talking about this whole hazing situation with the Dolphins and Ricky Incognito and I can't even remember the name of the guy that was getting hazed, and they were talking about, well, don't be so soft, don't be so, man up and stuff like that. And I couldn't believe that I was sitting there listening to people defend bullying in any way, shape, or form in this age. Hazing is nothing but bullying. It has no place in sports. It has no place in, modern society. I think for whatever reason, we keep defending hazing as though it's something different than bullying. And it just makes me sick whenever people sit there and talk about, well, the guy that's getting bullied is somehow the one that needs to change his behavior. It's just deplorable to me.
All right, so that's what burns Kelly's bacon today. We want to find out what makes you sizzle. We want to find out what you think of Derrick Rose and the Chicago Bulls in general. Again, thanks to Kelly Scaletta for coming on the show. This is Adam Fromal and Dan Favale with the Full Court Press.